Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Like tonight's film, this is 1983's Black Boots Leather Whip by Jess Franco, or Jesus Franco. This film right here, I have just lots of things to say, so you might see my eyes divert to some notes that I have down here below, so forgive me for that. A couple things right off the bat for Black Boots Leather Whip. If you look at any of the poster imagery for this film, you will realize that you'll see Lena Remey in a fur coat, and you'll say, huh, a fur coat? Outside? A fur coat? You know, that fur coat is pretty meaningful because it really mimics the overall colder vibe to the film. And when I think about the music in the film, it's electronic music. It's cold. It feels weird. It's dark. Stephen Thrower, I believe, even said that it reminded him of a Giorgio Moroder, like, gone haywire. Like, right from the opening, you're gonna say to yourself, okay, now this is not the Jess Franco jazz that I am typically familiar with. But, you know, seriously, all that said, like, can you really say that Jess Franco's music is what's typical over a span of almost like 300 films? You know, you associate Jess Franco, sure, with jazz music. Actually, most people probably associate him with Vampiros, Lesbos, and She Killed in Ecstasy music. And The Devil in Akasawa music, which is like available in that one album. The Vampire Sound Corporation or something, which is this psychedelic, bizarre jazz music, okay? But you look at a film which is, as of today, it's like my favorite movie ever because I rewatched it last night, but I have a video for it on this YouTube page already. The Night Has a Thousand Desires by Jess Franco. That music in that movie is so cacophonous. It is so oppressive. It would rival the sounds that you hear in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, okay? So when I talk about Black Boots Leather Whip and say that the music is electronic and it's cold and it seems to be a diversion from other Franco stuff, you know, not... He plays in the electronic world. And even the video that I did for his film, which you can find on this YouTube channel, Cecilia, also has electronic music in it as well. Now, we have dark vibes in this movie of nature and sky, okay? Nature and sky. There's this picture on the wall in a couple scenes earlier on in the film of Al Piera's apartment. The character, Al Piera, his apartment. And it's a woman, it's like a porno picture of a woman with her legs spread, okay? You know, bushy and all. And there's this amazing scene where Lena Remey asks him, oh, is that your girlfriend or wife? I forget, something like that. And he says, no, it's my mother. When you watch a Jess Franco film, I was thinking this last night when I rewatched Night Has a Thousand Desires. And you realize within 10 minutes, love it or hate it, that you're playing in a world that's unlike any other cinematic world in existence. And so the fact that this type of humor would all of a sudden just erupt, deadpan, serious, and you can tell Jess Franco's pitch black humor. You can tell his pitch black humor. Especially you can tell how he doesn't give a crap about mixing tones. He doesn't give a crap about, I mean, you look at the film that I also looked at on this YouTube page, you can find it, Mansion of the Living Dead, and you look at a scene of Lena Remay being raped by monks, okay? Almost zombie monks in a chapel, a church. And while she's being raped, Jess Franco's taking his camera and zooming into her vagina. There's a complex storyline in Black Boots Leather Whip. You have the Franco world that this complex storyline lives inside of, okay? And when you take a complex storyline in any film, when you put it into a Jess Franco film, and you include brazen, otherworldly, seemingly mentally, physically misplaced sex, you have this world. We have a transvestite or a transsexual in this film, which really was such an interesting plot point for me in here, because Franco will play all this different stuff in some of his films. I mean, you even have Ajita Wilson, who was a transsexual before our modern movements made it, cool and popular. I mean, Ajita Wilson was doing it when it was not cool and popular. From Macumba Sexual and Sadomania, I mean, real full-blown sex scenes. And the interesting thing is, we have a character here, and Jess Franco has also played characters like gay characters, I think in Sadomania, actually, which is also on this YouTube page. So we have a transvestite, kind of transsexual character, which is a very interesting plot point, and it does not seem to be played up for laughs, okay? It seems to be played up as just a part of the complex structure of the storyline, especially since this particular person is married to a woman, okay? Very, very interesting stuff, because it's through seemingly a bisexual man who is already becoming a woman or just a transvestite. Through this bisexual man, you get actually the purest love in this film towards his wife. Now, let's continue on for a second here. We have very violent gunplay in this film. I would say Franco films are not necessarily known for violent gunplay, but in this particular film, we do have just not gory, but when people are getting shot, it's like Ricky shooting people at the end of Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, okay? It's violent, and it erupts like a Tarantino film, like that scene in Tarantino's Inglourious Bastards, when they're in the German club and they're kind of playing this game, and all of a sudden they realize that the soldiers are not who they say they are, and all of a sudden just, right? There's a certain violence to gunplay. And people will typically say that if there's a crime and somebody gets killed by gunshot or they get killed by stabbing, that stabbing has a much more disturbing element to it, especially, when people are stabbed like 12 or 13 times, sometimes 40, 50 times. I mean, just to realize the mental state of that person, to be able to rip through someone's flesh that close, and to actually have the flesh and the blood on top of that person's hand while they're doing it. Yeah, that looked interesting, right? Anyways, but here, shooting someone, if done correctly, can be extremely disturbing and extremely violent. We have twists and turns in this movie. And I found that the most sexually arousing, erotic sex scene in the film was between two girls. That was, and then probably second would be Lena's husband, who's the transvestite, sucking on her nipples. We have complex free love, which is a theme in a lot of Jess Franco films, but free love, relationships, detective, spy, with vibes of exploitation and sexploitation. And Stephen Thrower also said it almost feels like a science fiction film, even though there's nothing science fiction happening. It's in the vibes of the movie, possibly linked to the music that I was just also mentioning. But beyond that, it's the music with the atmosphere that's being fostered. There is a scene that is repeated, but then it's repeated one final time, deleting an element. It's when a car is driving through water on the street, and it's making, like that tunnel of water on both sides of your car. There's like people tell you not to do that because you could damage your brakes or lose your brakes temporarily or whatever. And there's a scene of a car on the same stretch of road doing that. And it's very pleasing to the eye. But then at the end, I believe, the car drives there and the water doesn't do that. Really a big theme in this film too are lost characters. Lost characters. Being lost. Greed, sex, reputation, hate. Money over love. When I mentioned that one of the purest forms of love in the film seemed to me to be between a husband who was very candid with his wife about wanting to be or being with men and obviously visibly, physically dressing like a woman. That's the most purest, authentic love because his wife knows everything about him, still loves him. He almost alludes to the fact that he prefers men, but still truly loves his wife and loves his wife enough to perform sexually with her. Especially the licking of her nipples and everything I thought was great. Now, the other relationships in the film are pretty tarnished, but if you compare that honesty of the husband to his wife with the honesty of Al Pieri's character's girlfriend, his girlfriend's honesty with sleeping with a younger guy when he walks in on them, it's not the same. Free love is not always the same in Franco films. Free love people have this perception that Franco films mean that free love is applauded or it's encouraged or that in some ways his films are polemical, that they preach free love or something. Now, regardless of the fact that of Jess Franco and Lena Romay's relationship and their love and their openness in their love, possibly at times, even on screen. The interesting thing, you look at a film like How to Seduce a Virgin, which I've also done on this YouTube page, and you see consequences sometimes to free love. Despite Jess Franco's personal life, you see consequences to it. Jess Franco's obsession with the Marquis de Sade, which you can see scattered throughout all of his films, and for the most part, you'll see that it's not necessarily applauded. Sometimes there's a beauty to it. But then there's also a darkness to it that seems to bring degradation. Interestingly enough, themes of homosexuality are also in his film Sinfonia Erotica, which I also looked at on this YouTube page. Between men, I'm saying. Not common. But for someone who is such a quote-unquote pussy hound, as Stephen Thrower says, you would think that you could just chalk him up to being, he's the old school guy. Well, he's not Italian, he's Spanish, remember? And to say he's an old school guy, well, that would not fit him, right? The old school guy, construction worker stereotype, Italian guy catcalling in the streets of Italy. That doesn't work for him, and those guys wouldn't cast a transsexual and have sex scenes with them, or have sex scenes with men in Symphonia Erotica, or the character that's in this film here. The interesting thing is, when you look at Lena's character having sex with a variety of characters in this film whom she says she cares about, did Lena really enjoy the sex? Can you enjoy the sex with someone and just take their money? The theme of sex without love as well. Trust is another theme. Who can you trust? You have to have a level of trust if you're going to have sex with somebody. You have to have a level of trust if you're going to have somebody sleep over your house. You have to have a level of trust if you don't have sex with somebody and just share secrets with them. In Black Boots, Leather Whip, who can you trust? Who can you trust? Because the weapons in this film are hidden. They're hidden. A hidden knife, or a knife out in the open that the people in the room wouldn't associate with someone actually using to hurt somebody. Guns being so small that you can hide them in your coat, in your fur coat, near your vagina, which you are using for money, to lure, or possibly pleasure, or all of the above. The vibes in this film are very interesting. Apart from the story, does anyone else do what Jess Franco does? Does anyone else do what Jess Franco does in this film? Where do you see that? Franco's no-rules cinema. You see, in mainstream cinema, the vibe of the film matches the story. Not so in Black Boots, Leather Whip. The vibe of the film does not have to match the story. How could you have a sci-fi vibe in a story that has nothing to do with science? Whenever the vibe does not match the story, people consider that art house cinema or edgy, or something they don't want to see. You think to yourself, if you like burning scented candles, I collect scented candles. I love burning them during movies. Okay, if you're someone who wants to match a candle to the film, right, which is a great experience. I mean, people do. You could do this with incense as well. If you want to match a candle with that, or you can also do it with oils, body oils. You can go on. There's this site called vampfangs.com, where I buy like some oils for the skin, and they have like real kind of dark witchy or like smells and all these tons of different things. By the way, when I mention this stuff, I'm mentioning it to you as a friend. I just like the movies I look at on this page. I'm not sponsored by anybody. Can you tell there are no commercials on my videos? There's no payment. I don't want to get paid on YouTube. I don't have any of that. So there's no Patreon. There's nothing. I don't have Patreon. I don't have anything. So when I mention Vamp Fangs, it's just because I buy stuff from them to use as an example, and maybe you'd like it too. But anyways, so how would you then pick the candle for a Franco film? When it's difficult to pick a candle for a Franco film, that would mean that the vibe might not be meeting the storyline, or the genres are mixing. Zooming into a vagina during a rape scene by zombie, evil, satanic monks in Mansion of the Living Dead. Okay? Black Boots Leather Whip really does capitalize upon that. This is a really, really interesting film. And it's one that has a scene in it that to me has so much tension and so much suspense, and it's so effed up, including a blind girl and a whip, like the title, and just the craziest sequence with sound and vision, or lack of vision, turning into a true Venus and Furs Marquis de Sade turnaround, twist up. This blind characters can be played for disturbing shock cinema. I mean, you think of Troma's Terra Firma, be a little blind kid being played by Lloyd Kaufman, one of his daughters. Always the one I found most attractive as she got older, by the way. I forget her name. But anyways, what a sequence. You'll know the sequence when you see it in this movie. What a damn sequence. And Antonio Mayans, come on, man. You know, what's he, is he not, he's not credited as that. I think he's credited as Robert Foster in this one. Yeah, that happens. Music by Pablo Villa, which, that tends to be Daniel White, right? A pseudonym for Daniel White or Jess Franco. Written by Clifford Brown and Jess Franco. Clifford Brown, I believe, is a pseudonym for Jess Franco, so it's written by Jess Franco and Jess Franco. And Candy Coster, that's a pseudonym for Lena Romay. Black Boots Leather Whip, 1983. Here it is, folks. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like this film. It gets surreal. It gets dark. Wait till you see that whipped blind girl scene. Disturbing, dark, and an action twist.